Hello, everyone. Software I'm using was a bit slow to start. It's actually still loading. Just tell me if the sound is okay. And as soon as the software has loaded, I will share my screen and we'll start the live.
Okay. So now it should be okay. If you can confirm that you see my screen and you hear me correctly. All good. Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are going to discuss about 2023, what there is ahead of us in Jarvis. I will quickly speak about Syntherium and the roadmap. So it includes, of course, the new token. Then the vision. So I think it's important that you understand what are our convictions. So you understand why we build things in a certain way and why we take some decision. The ecosystem that we have now and the ecosystem we want to develop. And we're going to quickly speak about the standalone products, why we launch them, and that's all. So let's start with Syntherium. So Syntherium v2 is the current version of the protocol, which is deployed on Polygon, Optimism, Arbitrum, and that's all. Soon on BNB chain and on Gnosis. For now, on Gnosis and on BNB chain, it is Syntherium v1. And also we have Ethereum. On Ethereum, it's Syntherium v0. It was one of the first versions that we abandoned because of the gas fee. We will see if we will go back on Ethereum. It's something that I really want. But as a matter of fact, the protocol is quite heavy in terms of gas, especially because of the liquidity pool. And so on Ethereum, things, as you know, can get very pricey. So we'll see. I think it's very important for us to be on Ethereum at some point. But for now, the priority is, of course, to deploy the V2 elsewhere. So the V2 is comprised of two modules for swaps. The first one is liquidity pool, and the second one is wrapper. So the liquidity pool is to enable the swap between USDC or ETH for JFiat. And the wrapper is actually the same. The difference is that it enables swaps between one stablecoin and its JFiat equivalent. So for example, if you want to swap USDC for JEuro, you use the liquidity pool. If you want to swap EUROE for JEuro, you use the wrapper. There is also another difference between the wrapper and the liquidity pool. Liquidity pool, we need liquidity providers to bring liquidity. There is an over-collateralization system. For the wrapper, we don't need a liquidity provider because the way it works, you deposit a stable coin and we mint them at one-to-one. We have wrapper in production for a while now, and we have seen some stuff that can be improved. So this is part of the roadmap. So the first thing, for example, is trading fees. Today, there is no trading fees in the wrapper. So we can make a very tiny fee, like 0.01%, for example. And also, there is sometimes liquidity issue. For example, right now, you can buy J-Euro with Euro-E, but you can't do the opposite. You can't sell J-Euro for Euro-E because the liquidity has been depleted. So there will be, at a later stage, a wrapper version 2, where there will be trading fees and when we will try to solve the issue of the liquidity. Then we have the credit line. This allows to have access to loans, zero interest loans. So you just pay an origination fee, 0.5%, and then you can borrow JFiat. The current code is it's a credit line V2, and there will be after credit line V3. And then we have the printer, which is our tool to supply liquidity. So for now, we have been using the printer to supply liquidity on AAV, Midas, Market, and ZeroVix. You all know that we had the issue with Midas. There was a hack at the beginning of the year. And at the end of this presentation, I will re-explain you a bit our plan to move forward with that and the application that we have launched for the repaying the bad debt. But the printer can be used also to provide liquidity on AMMs. For now, we have never done it because we don't have created the sub-module for this. It is something that is used by other protocols. For example, Frax has been using it a lot. Angle has been using it a lot as well. So the idea is that you can print and provide liquidity on some pools where you can earn yield, where you can help to with an imbalance and so on and so on. So those are the 4 modules right now that we have on Synthereum V2. So what is left to be done to complete Synthereum V2? So the biggest piece of code is the LP vaults. So the liquidity pool comes with one limitation, and it's because of the gas. If, of course, we can have unlimited block space, it wouldn't be an issue. But because of that, and because, as I said, the protocol is kind of heavy, we had to find some tricks to enable anyone to become a liquidity provider. Because if we don't have multiple liquidity provider, we can't scale. So the LP votes is the most important piece of the protocol because it's what helps us to scale the liquidity on the primary market. So we finished the first version. We did an audit. We fixed things that were found in the audit. We did, again, an internal peer review. We found issues also that the audit didn't catch. We fixed them, retested everything, and we finally completed all the tests last week. We have now deployed the LP votes on a testnet, and now we will make real-time testing. So we will basically play for the next 2 weeks with LP on testnet to see if the system behaves exactly like it is supposed to behave. For credit line, as I said, now we have the V2. The V3 is a bit different. The collateral that you are using to borrow is lent on a money market, so typically AAV. So this is pretty cool because if you deposit USDC or if you deposit ETH or whatever, you can earn yield on the top of your borrowing. The code is done. It has been tested, but it is not audited, and we want to wait because the credit line V3 is also very much connected to the tokenomics, the new tokenomics. So we will wait first to launch the token and then to launch the credit line V3. And that's all. So what does it mean? It means that in terms of code, we are at the end of the road for Synthereum V2. Maybe there will be a V3, but it won't be this year. Maybe it will be next year. It will depend if we can see things that can be improved or if we have new ideas. So what does it mean that the work or the code is finished? It doesn't mean that we're going to stop working and now we have the code and do what you want with it. No, it means that now the focus of the company, the one who has developed the protocol, will shift toward two things. So the first thing is what I'm going to say at the end, standalone products. And the first thing is biz dev, so business development. So what it means that now that all the code will be ready, we need to attract liquidity. So of course, we have to have our community providing liquidity, but we also have to discuss with savvy investors to try to make them understand the way the protocol works, the risks, the rewards, and so on and so on. We already have some commitment, but it's just for now words. We will see if in the future, of course, they commit. But yeah, most of the thing will be to attract liquidity on the primary market, which means on the protocol, but also, of course, on the secondary market when we have pools on AMM and so on and so on. And this is what PLAS stands for. If you remember, it stands for Peg and Liquidity as a Service. The cool thing with Syntherium is the wrapper and the liquidity pool. It allows to swap token collateral for JFiat with no price impact. And it's a very powerful tool to help other stablecoins with their own liquidity and their own peg. I think if you are here tonight, you all know the principle of the PLAS pool. We did a live about it, and it's actually one of the main yield system that we have. So no need to expand on it. But what is interesting to understand is that we actually have a demand that we have never been able to meet because of the limitation of the pools, because we didn't have enough liquidity. So this is why the vault is important to attract more liquidity, which will allow us to make actually more pools. Those pools are very, very important for us because they are generating a lot of volume, a lot of fees, and because of the volume. And also, it's a matter of branding, because I'm going to explain it a bit more in the vision, but we want to position ourselves in a certain way. And this PLLS pool are very helpful for that. So we want to do more pools like that. So, Euro pools, BRL pool, Mexican peso pool, Swiss franc pool, and so on. Then something that we started to do not a while ago, actually it's a few weeks old, is to start doing JFiat USD and wrapped JFiat pools. So wrapped JFiat pools are, I think, the most valuable in terms of secondary market after the PLS pool, way more valuable than the JFiat USD pool. But you have more impermanent loss and so on. But the wrapped JFiat pool can really be a second source of decent liquidity and can create markets such as ETH Euro, ETH Swiss franc, and so on. We can, of course, do it already with our atomic swap system, but here at least it will be native to some AMMs. So we will launch more and more JFiat USD and more wrapped ETH JFiat pools. When I mean wrapped ETH, it could also be BNB. For example, on Binance Smart Chain, it's mainly with BNB. Maybe on Polygon, it could be with Matic and so on. So basically, it's gas token. So we will support more of those pools. Then support and integration in various interfaces. I could have also said in other protocols, but this was kind of logical. So what I mean is that, for example, we never really cared if the GRT or the JFiats were well integrated within wallets or this kind of thing. So we started a few weeks ago to reach out to different teams, different projects. So when someone buys JEuro, whatever the network is, they can see the JEuro logo on the Block Explorer. They can see it on Zerion, DBank, and so on, but also to support the protocol. So, for example, to have the credit line on Zerion and so on and so on. So this is, for me, part of the branding. It's always good when people can follow the protocol everywhere, whatever products they use. And grants. So grants, you have to understand it in two ways. The idea is to get grants, but also to give grants. So to get grants, it's easy to understand. We just apply to programs. So as you may know, Optimism has a grant program. BNB has a grant program. Most likely Arbitrum will have one. and so on and so on. But also sometimes some projects have the kind of problem. So the idea is to try to get some grants to help us bootstrapping the liquidity, bootstrapping the network, and also in terms of marketing in the blockchains where we are. And then it's also to give grants, because on the top of Jarvis, you can actually build a lot of cool products. And it's things that we won't have the time or we don't want to build internally. And we prefer if other people, other teams, other independent developer do it. We already have one, which is called the stableswap.fi, which is some kind of Forex, on-chain Forex, which is built on the top of Jarvis, but not only, of course, but it leveraged Jarvis. So this was the first grant that we gave. And there are other people working on some projects connected to grants, like a remittance application or a way to go from USDC to SUSD, for example. So an equivalent to StableSwap, but on Optimism. So having grants, for me, it's important. It's also a way to integrate developer communities, participate to hackathon. So overall, of course, it's very important. Then there are all the things that I didn't mention. For example, until now, we were very, let's say, conservative in the events we were attending to. Basically, we only attended to DeFi meetups and to each HCC. So now we will try to be present first everywhere and in more events. So we, of course, still go to each HCC and so on, but now we're trying our best to become speaker or sponsor this kind of thing in various events. As you may know, before crypto, I was a lot into the educational industry. So part of the BizDev this year that I have started already 1 or 2 months ago is to educate in France and also in French language people with DeFi, crypto, and what we do. So I'm now teaching DeFi and everything related to how we can use DeFi as a user or as a service provider to generate yield in a small group. So it's like my beta tester. So I'm fine-tuning the lessons, and then when I will be confident enough that the quality is here, I will do it on my YouTube channel where we have 50,000 people. So we can reach out to many more people. And I want to try to position myself as, this kind of thing, education and so on, consultant. So this may seem not very related to Jarvis, but actually it is because I think the best marketing is education. So this is for the BizDev. So then, of course, there is the new token. So GRT will become Jarvis. We already made a video about it. There are few changes since we have done the video. I think one of the most important change that people like is inflation. Initially, we wanted to print literally more token because we are like, we don't have enough token. We can use the new tokens for strategic sale. We can use a new token that we could print for liquidity money. But at the end of the day, it just creates more inflation. It just creates selling pressure. So with the evolution of DeFi, with the emergence of bribes, VE33 model, and so on, we can do our best to. We don't need inflation as of now, and I will explain you also another reason why we don't need inflation. So the GRT model inherits from the VE model. So the lock, the longer you lock, the more power you get, but there is no gauge, there is no inflation. So you can to mint the VE token, you will need to stake LP token. So of course you can stake just the token Jarvis. But if you do so, there is a possibility that at some point we hit regulatory issues, where if you just take a token and you get rewarded for that, it can be seen as basically security token. So this is why there is a very cool thing, which is called 92.2 pool. So basically, those are liquidity pools where you just need to add or to sell 2% of your token in order to become an LP token. So if you have $10,000 of Jarvis token. So basically, you will just have to add $200 to be LP, or you will just sell $200 of your Jarvis in order to become an LP. And by doing that, you provide value to the ecosystem because you become a liquidity provider and you can stake and mint VE Jarvis. Of course, there are multiple pools. It can be 80-20, 50-50, and so on. But I think the most interesting thing will be the dual staking system. So the idea is that first, we won't have long lock. We can't lock a token for 4 years just because in 4 years, many things can change. So actually, it will be very small lock. We were thinking about 6 months maximum to 12 months, even though 12 months is, I think, a lot also. And so the idea will be that there are some pools where you can earn yield with Jarvis token already. For example, we have pool on Solid Lazar, on Velodrome, on BN, on Dot, Tena, and soon we're going to apply for Gauges on Balancer and so on. So there is yield, and it's good if you can actually stake a stake token. So this is the dual stacking, which means that with the V Jarvis, you will earn the yield from Jarvis, you access the boost, the power, and so on. And you still earn an underlying yield from third-party protocol. So it will increase the liquidity, it will generate additional yield, and people will have the choice between high impermanent loss pool, lowest impermanent pool, or almost zero impermanent pool. Again, for people who just want Jarvis with not a lot of impermanent loss and not a lot of capital to commit, this could be done. And for the one who really don't want to have to add capital, the idea would be to develop something on the top of the staking system where basically you can commit your token, someone else will commit, for example, ETH, and to have a on-chain agreement between the two according to the price. Like if the price goes up, basically some of the GRT are sold for ETH, and if the price goes down, some of the ETH are sold for GRT. So we will find some solutions for that. Then the token will provide you with voting power and boost rewards for liquidity providers and borrowers. So voting power, I think it is self-explanatory. Boost reward, so liquidity pools and in the future, so wrappers, they need liquidity providers. And when you borrow using the credit line in the V3, as I said, the collateral will be lent to on AAV and so on and so on. So when you have unlocked the token, if you're a liquidity provider or a borrower, it will actually increase the yield that you generate from being a liquidity provider or being a borrower. Then there is a fee sharing system. So the protocol takes some commissions on the top of swaps or yield, and so, the yield generated by the collateral. Also interest. Every time someone will borrow using the credit line, the interest goes back to the protocol. And also, and I think this for me will be one of the largest source of yield, the POL, protocol on liquidity. So protocol on liquidity, here you have to understand it in 2 ways. It is protocol on liquidity on the primary market, which means that the protocol itself is a liquidity provider within Syntherium. So for J-Euro and so on and so on. But also on secondary markets. This is what we do today with, so the protocol is a LP on Optimism and also on Polygon for J-Euro. But also the protocol is a liquidity provider on Ellipsis, and on Tena. And we have accumulated fees and so on. And so we will need at some point to make a proposal to know what to do with those fees. So we have close to 20K on BNB that we could use to do some farming, so to provide liquidity on secondary markets, or we can send it to another blockchain and also do to do farming there. And we also have $10,000 of Optimism token, for example, that we received when we locked the Velo. So what do we do with it? Do we farm with it? Do we sell them? Do we borrow? Now we can borrow J-Euro with OP token. So we could borrow J-Euro, deposit them, and farm and so on. And we can also use them for bribes. Anyway, so I think the treasury management and the protocol on liquidity can be one of the major source of revenue. And so the VE Jarvis holder, they have access to those revenue, and so there is the fee sharing. And of course, there is the fee revenues through the buybacks, because part of the revenue and yield generated by the LPs and by people borrowing as fiat are actually used to buy back directly from the market. Then there is the meta governance. Well, this is like voting power, but the protocol is acquiring voting power in the various protocols. So at some point, you could decide with your VE Jarvis what we do with those voting power, for what do we vote, and so on and so on. And this is an open question. Jarvis, should it be the token of the Jarvis network or Synthereum? So this is a question I will openly ask to the community way later this year, most likely at the end of the year or maybe next year. Because if you go back a bit in the history of Jarvis, the Jarvis network was not supposed to be a protocol. It was supposed to be a set of protocols. We first launched a protocol called Margineum. It was in 2019, and we are a bit early. There was no user in DeFi. DeFi actually barely existed. Actually, we launched the testnet in 2018 and the mainnet in 2019. And it was basically a protocol for CFD. It's what we call today perp trading. So basically, it was a protocol to buy and sell with leverage against liquidity pool. It was not decentralized. There was an off-chain oracle, and there was the emergence of DeFi that we started to see. So we decided to stop Margineum and to focus on the other protocol we started working on, which was Synthereum for the synthetic assets. And the idea at the beginning was to have Margineum, then Synthereum, and then other protocols, and to have one token managing everything. So now that there will be the new token, and there is a Synthereum protocol, I told you at the beginning of this live that we will do standalone products and standalone protocols. Some of those protocols will have their own token. So at some point, we'll have a few different tokens in the ecosystem of Jarvis network. And so the question will be, should the Jarvis token be the token of Jarvis network? So a bit like Frax is doing, or even Synthetix with the separation between Quenta and Synthetix. With, let's say, on the top of the pyramid, you have the token, the Jarvis token, and then you have the different sub-protocol with some of them their own token. And if we do this, it means that Synthereum will need to have its own token as well. So this is why for now it's an open question. Not sure if we're going to do it or not. It will depend if we see value in doing it or not. So now let's speak about the vision that drives most of the thing in Jarvis. So you have to understand that we work following two convictions. The first one is we need user-facing products. So for me, DeFi, the way it is now, will remain a niche. I don't see how the DeFi we are using can be used by millions of people, not just because of the scalability issue, but also because of the liquidity issue. But we can put this in scalability actually, and the complex user experience. I mean, there is no way that we can do better than a Robinhood. There is no way we can do better than a Revolut. And not to mention all the challenges that will arise with the regulation and so on and so on. And also in DeFi, usually there is no customer support. Actually, there is no customer, there are users. And people, they like to have support. I mean, there are all those things that prevent today DeFi to be mass adopted. But that doesn't mean that DeFi cannot be huge. That doesn't mean that DeFi cannot deliver value. This is why I like to say DeFi is a niche. It could be a gigantic niche, but for me, it will still remain a niche. And for this niche of crypto-native people, NFT collectioner, metaverse enthusiast, and so on, and power user, they need different products. So the products that you are building today are for those people, not necessarily for beginners and so on. So the user-facing product for Synthereum today, it's to gain exposure to various currencies, euro, pound, and so on. To do leverage trading, it's possible by borrowing, doing loops and so on and so on. To earn yield in different currencies, you can earn yield in Mexican peso, even in Swedish krona or what else that we launched recently. Even gold. So of course there is no yield on Swedish krona. There is no liquidity pool. But what you can do is, for example, you can put your Swedish krona in collateral to borrow J-Euro. And then you can farm with the J-Euro. So basically, you don't have the exposure to the J-Euro because you have exposure to your collateral, but you earn yields denominated in Swedish krona. You can also do on-chain payments. If your DAO is with European people or Mexican people, maybe you prefer to pay in Mexican peso, in euro, and so on. So this is what we are focusing on today. And I could add here products for crypto native. But my vision of DeFi and our conviction is that there is another thing that we have to see. For me, DeFi is the best backend for financial services, even if those financial services are centralized. I totally imagine a world where Revolut or Venmo, I don't know where from where in the world you are watching this video, can use DeFi and blockchain as an underlying backend, basically, system for liquidity, yield, and so on. So I totally envision a world where tomorrow in Revolut, you can deposit, for example, Euro or USD, and it will be lent on Aave or this kind of thing. So it means that the protocol and the liquidity and so on that we are building needs to be ready to be used as infrastructure to power different services. So the first one that we mentioned already is, of course, the PLAAS, which stands for Peg and Equity as a Service. So basically, it's a service that we can provide with two other stablecoins. We go to see them and say, look, if you do a pair with our J-Euro or with our GMXN or whatever, you can access to more liquidity. You can access to yields, and you can improve considerably your peg. So we want the PLLS to really be a way for other projects to think liquidity. When you will launch a stablecoin, you don't have to only wonder, okay, in which AMM should I go and so on. You also have to think, okay, with which non-USD stablecoin I have to be paired with. And we really want to position the stablecoin of Jarvis here. I think they are doing a fantastic job for that. I still didn't have time to publish insights, but you can check by yourself. You can, for example, check the liquidity of AJ Euro or the liquidity of PAR with and without the pools we have with them. It's day and night. So I think we provide value to the Euro ecosystem. And this is what it's important to understand. We are not here to become the largest Euro stablecoin. Actually, I think to become the largest of something is ultra risky because you create systemic risk. Imagine if we have just one huge Euro stablecoin or one huge USD stablecoin, and this stablecoin has an issue one day. It can create huge damages. So as how to say, weird as it sounds, for DeFi in general, it is better if all the stablecoins work together instead of trying to compete. This is what I try to, it's the message that I try to send to many projects with who we work or with who we want to work to make them understand that it is a mistake if you think that you are on a race against other stablecoin. You are not in a race against other stablecoin. You are in a race against the USD monopoly. If we want the Euro stablecoin market to grow, we have to act as a group and not as individual. And this is where the PLAS system for me takes all its sense, because what we can do for the Euro infrastructure and what we can do for the Euro stablecoin group is to help with the liquidity. Then we have, of course, the on-chain forex. So the cool thing with the PLAS is that when you create a pair, thanks to the way Jarvis works, you can actually connect pools together. So, for example, the pool PAR J-Euro and the pool JBRL BRZ. We may think that there is zero connection between them, but actually, J-Euro and JBRL are connected through our protocol. you can convert one for the other one, which means that PAR is connected both to GBRL, but also to BRZ. And on-chain Forex is, for me, one of the most valuable also use case for non-USD stablecoin. This is why, again, it is more profitable for the whole ecosystem to work together. For example, we work a lot with Transfero. Transfero, who is the issuer of BRZ. If we were solo, and if we are like, no, we want to have more liquidity than them, we want to do this, we will hardly be able to connect PAR, or even better, to connect EUROE with BRZ. But because we try to connect with many stablecoins, then we can connect stablecoin together. And this is how today you can exchange EUROE for BRZ or EUROE for CATSI from our friend Paytree. And this goes to the second vision here that we have, to increase and to improve the on and off ramp solution. So let's take the example of EUROE. EUROE for me, hands down, is the best on and off ramp that you can find on the planet today. It's easy, there is zero competition. There is actually one competition, which is still not ready for the Euro. It's fluid.ch, which is launched on Arbitrum. If you don't know them, go to try them. You can download the application, pass the KYC quite fast, and do your first on and off ramp. You're gonna see it's the future for me. And EUROE has exactly the same set of features. So if you don't know EUROE, basically, if you have Euro, you pass your KYC with Monerium, and Monerium will create an IBAN for you. It's at your name, and will connect the IBAN to your 0x, so to your address on Ethereum, Polygon, Gnosis, and so on and so on. And then what? Every time you send Euro to your own IBAN, instantly, after some seconds, EUROE is minted in your 0x. And vice versa, when you send EUROE to Monerium, it is converted to Euro and it is sent from your IBAN to the IBAN of your choice. Find me a better on and off ramp. So if we started with Monerium with a pool. We create a pool EUROE J-Euro. Then we launched a wrapper, which means that you can mint J-Euro with EUROE. But unfortunately, because the bear market and we had less and less token, we stopped the yield on the EUROE J-Euro, but it will come back very soon actually. And the idea of this is that it creates better on and off ramp system. Of course, it may sound more complicated because you first have to send Euro to Monerium to receive EUROE. Then you have to swap EUROE for J-Euro. But think a bit out of the box. Now imagine that you have a company who wants to provide the best on and off ramp services. So what they would do, they would actually use Monerium plus the infrastructure that we have built, liquidity infrastructure for stablecoin. Because what actually Jarvis is doing with Monerium is to bring more liquidity for the EUROE. This is what we are going to do also on Gnosis. I'm very excited to launch a bit more our ecosystem on Gnosis, more liquidity, the wrapper. There is already a pool EUROE J-Euro on Gnosis chain, and that's also. We really want to push that because we want to be the liquidity infrastructure for Monerium. And here you can see that we don't want people to see the J-Euro. We want people to see EUROE. And people should say, okay, if I want to onboard from Europe, I will use EUROE, and then I will swap EUROE for USDC. But what will happen under the hood is that first the EUROE will be swapped for J-Euro and J-Euro for USDC. But it's okay if no one knows about J-Euro. We want to be a backend. So this is why we do all those pools. It's not just for yields. It's not just to have a bigger TVL. I'm always looking for utility. Every time I propose to do a pool, I only check, okay, but can it bring value? Can we deliver value? What can it bring to the ecosystem? And then to go from on and off ramp to remittance, you just have one step. If you mix on and off ramp with on-chain Forex, you have a way to move money from one side of the planet to the other side. Let's take again the example of EUROE. If you want to move, let's go in the cliché, you are Portuguese and your family is in Brazil. You just send Euro to your Monerium IBAN. You have EUROE, and then you can swap the EUROE for BRZ, and then your family in Brazil can go from BRZ to Brazilian real. They can even put their BRZ in their WireX cards and go to spend them in everywhere they want. I mean, it is insane all the things that you can do when you connect on and off ramp together through a remittance on-chain Forex markets. Then, of course, collateralized loans. So I don't know if you know, but when you borrow euro on DeFi, borrow crypto in DeFi, and you cash them out, you have to pay taxes, at least in Europe. But when you borrow euro, real euro, with a crypto collateral using a bank, some banks are proposing this service, you don't pay taxes because it's considered as a loan. But when you off-ramp stablecoin, it is considered as cashing out. So there is a way to mix the two by using, again, on and off-ramp and the credit line. So the way it can work is that you actually, so you have a user who deposits Bitcoin in your wallet. And in exchange, you give euro. But what actually you do, the Bitcoin, you exchange them for wrapped BTC. Then you borrow J euro with the wrapped BTC. Then the J euro, you transform them into EUROE, then into euro, and then you give the euro to your customer. And like that, you can have Bitcoin euro collateralized loan. The customer won't pay taxes, but your whole infrastructure is on the blockchain. This is why we do all those credit line. Of course, we do credit line because we want people to borrow for providing liquidity. But in reality, the long-term vision here is to try to have this use case. And then yields, actually, there are many companies, startups, who are contacting not just us, but many other stablecoin issuers because they want to provide their user with yield in euro. So, for example, you may have heard about Swissborg. They work with Par from Mimo, and they provide their user with yield in euro. And you have many small startups who want to provide yield in euro for companies and so on. Unfortunately, because we are not scalable enough, I had to say, no, we are not ready yet. But once we grow, we can develop a bit more of this thing. So now I hope you understand a bit more why we do things and the vision that we have for the protocol. You can see that we want to go beyond the DeFi niche, and we want the DeFi and the blockchain to be used for real, provide financial services and value. Let's speak about the ecosystem. So this is the J-Fiat ecosystem as of today. So the first line is all the way you have to buy and sell J-Fiat for fiat. So obviously you have our long-term partner Montpellerin. As you may know, unfortunately, we reached out the end of our budget. We were paying for the fees, so we had a zero fee for 1 year and a half. But obviously, money doesn't grow on tree. So we have to find solution to bring this back. So there is some community members who are thinking about solution to find sustainable yield source in order to subsidize again the fees from Montpellerin to again allow people to go from fiat to crypto. In terms of number, we helped 3,000 people to do it for $30 million with zero fee. Montpellerin is still used, even if now there are fees, which shows that actually people are willing to spend money for a good service. Montpellerin is very focused on privacy and support, customer support. So obviously people are still using them, but obviously the volumes are not as big as before. Then we have Swarmy, which is the equivalent of Montpellerin in Mexico. It is a startup which allows Mexican people to go from Mexican peso to JMXN. Recently, we had Acedux, which basically allows people to buy JFiat with debit or credit cards. And of course, we have this trio. And I could actually add also Stasis. I didn't add them because it's a bit more complicated, the KYC with Stasis. But basically, those are indirect fiat on and off ramp because with Monerium, you can buy EUROE. With Pay3, you can buy CATC. And with Stratix, you can buy XSGD. But then you can go from XSGD to JSGD, CATC to JCAD, and EUROE to JEURO. So those are basically fiat on and off ramp by proxy. Then we have request and superfruit, which are the two ways to pay people on chain. So request is to create invoices, but even more, you can set up salary, you can set up streams, and so on and so on. Super fluid, it's a way to stream JFiat. So basically, instead of paying at the end of each month, you put a stream and you can stream JEuro, JCAD, and so on and so on. So those two tools are used by DAOs or freelancers and so on to be paid or to pay using JFiat. And of course, we want to push even more, and the more liquid and big are our JFiat, and the more it can be used by people. Then we have trading protocols. So we have Min and Neon. They are both DCA tool. So it's very cool. You, for example, if you mix Min with Montpellier or with Monerium, and if you are a European user, of course. So you can acquire JEuro with both Montpellier and Monerium. And let's say you want to buy 500 JEuro per month. So you buy 500 JEuro, you deposit them into Min, and you say, I want that every week, I want to buy ETH. So every week, Min Finance will basically sell part of your JEuro to buy ETH. You can also say every day or every month and so on. So it's a way to do some DCA. And then at the end of each month, you top up again. So you buy from Montpellier, you deposit in Min and so on. Neon is doing the same thing. The difference is the liquidity. Neon is using Kyber, while Min Finance is using Paraswap. Of course, we have Paraswap, which is the DEX aggregator, which integrates our protocol. And we have StableSwap that I introduced earlier. It's basically the first one to get a grant from us, where you can swap stablecoins between each other. Then you have the yield ecosystem. So you have, of course, Bifi and Harvest, which are the two main tools to automate the yield generation with JFiat. You have AP1, which has put on hold their protocol until they launch the V2. So we hopefully will see the V2 soon. It's a fantastic product. I'm not doing this. Of course, I'm biased. I have invested in AP1. They are French guys, part of the community. But it's honestly a great product. And to don't be biased, I also love a lot of Pendle. So the idea of AP1 is to separate the yield from the principal. And you can sell your yield in advance. And you can also buy the yield of people who sell the yield. And I think this is a very undervalued opportunity in DeFi that will please maybe newcomers. Because if you tell them, hey, you can buy yield at a discount. So for example, someone that pays 10% per year, maybe you can buy it for, you can buy, let's say for something like 7%. So you will make the difference. You won't make 3%. You buy 7%, something that will generate 10%. So it's like 1.2 more. And Picnic, which is my favorite protocol. Basically, Picnic, and there is another one that, of course, we are discussing with a lot of protocols. I just put the one with we work now. It's a way to automate everything related to trading and yields. It is a fantastic product that I invite you to use. For example, if you have JEuro and you are a beginner and you want directly to deposit JEuro in a yield pool, but you just say where you want to deposit, and Picnic will do everything for you. Then you have all the secondary markets. So we have Balancer, Tena, Ellipsis, Curve, Solidlizer, Velodrome, Kyber also, what I forgot. And then we have also BetSwirl, which is the online casino. Because yes, you can play roulette and you can play dice and you can play coin toss, and soon you will be able to play Russian roulette against each other using JEuro and JMXN. And then you have AAV and not save, 0VIX and Midas, which are the place where you can borrow JEuro. AAV has frozen the JEuro after the hack, and it will be unfrozen after the bad debt is repaid. So in terms of a roadmap for this year, what you have to expect. So obviously, we are now working to include the protocol on Paraswap on every blockchain, because if maybe you don't know, but right now it is only integrated in Polygon. So now we work to integrate it in many of our blockchains, and then we will try to integrate the protocol on, of course, other DEX aggregator. But since now there is something called meta aggregator, for example, DeFi Llama, it doesn't make sense to be listed on many different DEX aggregator, because DeFi Llama will basically choose the best routes. So to be on every network with Paraswap is the way. StableSwap should release their V2 and be on many more network, we want more assets to be supported on Min, and that's all. In terms of yield, as I said, we are waiting for IP Wine. I have already a lot of ideas what we can do. So I'm just waiting. For the payment, there is also DeFi Llama Pay that we are looking to be integrated within. And of course, all the BizDev that I mentioned before, to be listed a bit everywhere, to have our pools and credit line and so on every interface that we can find. To develop a bit more the liquidity on Betswall and to have more money markets on different network. And of course, more DEX here to have more liquidity on secondary markets. And we finish with the standalone product. So if you are looking, sorry, I was one slide ahead. So why standalone products? So I already explained you before, Jarvis Network is supposed to be an ensemble of different products, not just one protocol. And then there is also another reason. So let's speak about the Jarvis token. So maybe I don't know if you know, but most of the token holders are actually not crypto people. They are people who are waiting on the site and they just want to earn yield and actually that's all. They want the GRT to be to generate revenue or that they can use inside the protocol. So this is actually good and bad at the same time. Bad because most of our holders, they are not involved in DeFi nor in crypto. So this is a problem. And we cannot create new tokens. I mean, we could, in theory. We could double the circulating supply. But if we do this, we're going to dilute everyone. And it's a pity because we can't make aggressive liquidity mining. One of the problems that we have, I don't say we are unlucky and so on. I don't try to find excuses, but let's be realistic. We have never been able to do a big liquidity mining because we don't have a lot of tokens to distribute. If, of course, we would have launched way later the token, it would have been actually way more beneficial for the protocol. We could have made, airdrop, fair launch. I mean, basically, we could have be maybe more into different communities and so on because of that. But because we already have launched our token and most of the token was already distributed, we couldn't do this. And I think it's handicapped us a bit. And one way to fix this is, of course, to mint more tokens. But as I said, we won't do this because it will dilute. But then if we won't do it, how can we do aggressive liquidity mining? How can we involve more people who are crypto native in the community? And of course, the other problem of the token is the lack of liquidity. So here comes the standalone product. Instead of creating more tokens and so on, the idea is to leverage new products that can be built on the top of Jarvis and that will drive usage into Jarvis. So it's some kind of token by proxy. And the cool thing with those new products is that we can do fair launch, we can do airdrop. For some products, for example, these products, I think it will be one of the biggest side projects that we do. We may need also fundraising. So there are many different things that are interesting when you launch a new product. So the idea of those protocols is to drive volume and users towards Jarvis and to have their own token for most of them. And if you are looking for alpha and explanation, no, I will just tell you the three categories and what we want to achieve. So the first one is yield, second one is liquidity, and the last one is meta governance. So yield is basically protocols or products with or without token. Most of them actually won't have a token, which are designed to facilitate, to automate the yield. So I can give a few examples because we already spoke about it publicly when we had the bad debt. So we had a few ideas of strategies that we can use with JFiat that no yield aggregator wants to do because it's a bit more complex and they don't have the dev resources. There are few protocols that will be launched this year or later this year that also could help us here. Some protocols that will help to create yield strategy and so on. So this is why sometimes we will create actually a product on the top of another protocol. We are just waiting for them to launch and this kind of thing. And sometimes it will be just very basic stuff that we can do on our own. So yeah, protocol to enable and to ease the yield generation. And also to create strategies that are a bit more complex in one click. So basically here it's one click strategy, one click yield. Liquidity, those are protocols that, protocol for now, we only have one protocol in mind, even though liquidity and meta-governance can be seen together, where it's basically is designed to drive usage of the token, of the JFiat. So the idea is to create protocol to increase liquidity and to increase the usage as a liquid driver, let's say, of the JFiat. And finally, meta-governance, this, because it's one protocol, will be a protocol that can do many things. So first, it increase efficiency of liquidity. It also increase liquidity, yield, and it allows to capture governance tokens, so other tokens that can control the emission and so on. And that's pretty much it. So again, some of them will have their tokens, some of them will have an airdrop, some of them will have a fair launch. It will really depend on the strategy we will decide. The first project we will work on will be the meta governance. So when we will launch our proof of concept, most likely we'll start with Polygon. You will hear about it and you will be able to, of course, participate to the testing. Voila, I think we covered everything. There was one last thing that I wanted to share with you, but first, if you have a question, I'm listening. Okay, so there is no question. I will share the last thing. It's a very good question, him. So the Jarvis token will be initially minted on Ethereum, but you will be able to mint VE on every blockchain. So there could be VE on BNB, VE on Polygon, VE on Optimism, VE on Ethereum, and so on and so on. The idea is to have cross-chain governance and also cross-chain everything. So all the fees, all the voting power, and so on and so on. So like that, there will be less, friction. So as you may know, we were supplying liquidity. The protocol was supplying liquidity on Midas using the printer, which means that we print JFiat and we supply the JFiat to Midas so people can borrow. Unfortunately, Midas did a small mistake, which led to big consequences, which was a hack. They added the collateral. Usually, Midas team is very professional. When they do something, they do testing and they check that the collateral they add doesn't have a risk. This time, and this time only, they didn't do it. It's not that they were lazy, they had a wrong assumption that the code they were using in another blockchain on BNB was the same as the code they used for this collateral on Polygon. And so they said, we tested it on BNB, no need to test it on Polygon. And unfortunately, the code was different. And this led an attacker to see the issue and to hack Midas. And unfortunately, this collateral was added in our pool. And therefore, we have inherited from what we call a bad debt. The attacker succeeds to steal all of us. So it's 367 euro, 237,000 Swiss franc, and 41,000 JGBP. The first days, of course, the market reacted. Many euro were sold because people were afraid and so on. Then market quickly came back, let's say, to the normal. And now everything is settled. Of course, there is still the bad debt, but it looks like the market is not very worried about it. So there are a few ways to combat this. So the first thing is the dilution of the bad debt. Dilution means to basically buy JFiat. So the proportion of bad debt reduces versus the amount of JEuro or JFiat in circulation. But this doesn't remove the bad debt. It just helps to lower the risk. The way to reduce the bad debt is actually to reimburse the bad debt. So we came up with this application, debt.jarvis.network. It is on Polygon. So anyone can help us to repay the bad debt. On our side, we have acquired a large amount of JFiat. So we participate to the dilution and we keep those JFiat, but we generate yield with it. So we bought them and we keep them like that. If at some point people want to exit JEuro, if at some point people want to sell or if there is a panic sell, we will be basically the holder of the last resort. And the plan is, of course, to buy back the debt. So Midas is committed to repay the bad debt. They are raising funds and they will generate revenue. So it will take time. Us, even though it's not our fault, we are committed to do it as well. So we commit time to time. Every month, what we'll do is to check how much money we generated this month, to take a part of those revenue and to buy bad debt. And as I said, we have bought token to dilute the bad debt. We have also protocol friends who committed to help us. The first one who did it was Jarvis, but we have other protocols who said they will. I just didn't reach out to them. But for example, Jarvis, they gave us $5,000 to help us repay the bad debt. So how can people help us? Basically, you just go to this application, debt.jarvis.network, and you just click here on contribute. And you can commit any amount that you want. You can decide to do it with or without a counterparty. If you do it with a counterparty, you will receive one debt token. If you do it without counterparty, it's a donation. You don't receive anything. If you receive one debt token, we will buy back those debt tokens so either with the Jarvis token, if the Jarvis token has sufficient liquidity, market cap, and so on, so at a discount. So it's a way if you want to buy GRT at a discount in the future. Basically, you lock your debt, and then in the future, you can buy GRT at a discount. Or we will buy back with using JEuro, again at a discount of 10%. The thing is, now there is yield on JEuro, so there is almost zero incentives for people to repay the bad debts. Because if you have JEuro, why you would put them here instead of farming on the par and angle a pool and so on and so on. So I'm not expecting the bad debt of the JEuro to be reduced anytime soon because again there is yield opportunity. There is no yield for Swiss franc and there is no yield for British pounds. But right now, all the blockchain are segmented. But very soon we will launch module to go from one blockchain to another one, which means that the Swiss franc on Polygon could be sent to BNB or elsewhere where basically you can generate yield. Also, the Swiss franc could be used to borrow JEuro and this kind of thing. So it means that, again, there won't be a lot of incentives to repay the bad debt because you can generate yield with Swiss franc. I'm also discussing for a very long time now with British pound projects. Monerium is also soon launching their British pound, so there will be yields on British pound, which means, again, that there won't be incentives to repay the bad debt. So I don't expect the bad debt to be repaid quickly. And maybe we're going to repay it ourselves faster than what the community will do, because at some point we will, let's say, every month put some money there. For now, we have bought back 2,000 Swiss franc and 4.1 thousand British pound and just 161 JEuro. So those are basically people willing to help. So that's all. You are not obliged to do it. As I said, the harm is done already. now it's been almost 2 months. The market held, the peg held. So, and since there is yield, for now, people prefer to dilute the bad debt rather than repaying it. Yeah, 30% of the Swiss franc on Polygon are uncollateralized. There is also something else I forgot to mention. So let's say there is a bank run on the Swiss franc. So at some point, people won't be able to sell all the Swiss franc. So we have money. We still have over $1 million in our treasury, our own treasury. Obviously, for now, we use this treasury to farm and to generate revenue and so on. But in the case where someone needs to sell their Swiss franc, and if there is no more liquidity because of the uncollateralization, then of course we will buy back using OTC deals those Swiss franc. The hacker get those tokens, or it was gone? No, he got the token, he sold them for Matic, and he kept them in Matic. And now there are few teams that are monitoring his address, but he sent them to 100 of different addresses. He already cashed out on some exchanges, and the problem is that it's only Midas who can file a complaint to the police, and it's what they try to do, but it's not as easy as that because they are in an offshore entity. But yeah, the idea is also to move forward with this. We keep following the wallet of the guy, hopefully one day to get back those tokens. Okay, so I think we are done for tonight. There was another live that I have done last week. There was an issue with the live. It looks like it created another link. So if you didn't see, it was about farming, how to farm with GRT, how to farm with JFiat. It's in our YouTube channel, so you can go to check it. And for the next live that I will do, I will try to do one next month. It will be more for educational purpose. The idea will be to explain a bit because some people ask often the same question, like how different AMM works, what is V33, V, that's all, what is the locker, and so on. So the idea will be, since it's very important for Jarvis now to work with VE model, locker, and V33, to try to educate our community about this. So if it's something that you don't know, even though we spoke a bit about it in the previous live, there will be a full lesson about the VE model, the VE33, and the lockers. So I wish you a good end of your day and see you soon on Discord. Bye, everyone.